Okay, so now we're reading Revelation 8, and we just got finished reading verses 7 through 13, and then went to Ezekiel 38 as a cross-reference, because it's real important to see what's going on. That is, Ezekiel 38 is all about the Battle of Armageddon. It's being gathered and coming together, and the Lord showing up, his presence, and what takes place, and earthquakes, and all these things that are going on that surround that time and what's happening. And also there's a portion there that talks about the birds of the air being gathered by the Lord to basically feed off all the carcasses and all the stuff that's going on. So now we're going to continue going back to Revelation 8. And as we read through again a little bit of what's going on here, we're going to see correlation with some of the things that Ezekiel 38 listed with what we see here. So the first angel, this is the trumpets, the first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. All right, so verse 7, we can cross-reference with Revelation 7:3. I'm going to go back to Revelation 7:3, where just before the sealing of the 12 tribes of Israel, it's talking to the angel having the seal of the living God who's getting ready to seal them. And he says, verse 3, saying, do not harm the earth, this or the sea or the trees till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. So when we skip back up to here in chapter 8, the first trumpet is, and the first angel sounded, and hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees, remember it says don't harm the trees in the other one? Mm-hmm. So a third of the trees were burned up, and green grass was all burned up. So that is different viewpoints about this. Again, some people see this as hail and fire falling from heaven mingled with blood, like it could be actually just literally fire and hail mingled with blood falling from heaven, or it could have something to do with war that's taking place. There's different viewpoints about that. Okay, then we go to verse 8. Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. Again, thinking of Ezekiel 38. So if anybody's listening to this portion of this teaching, you can look up 38 and read it for yourself because it's very telling. So it says, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. So that some people think is like a meteor or something of that nature, a comet or a meteor. It says a great burning mountain with fire. I think it is a comet that actually has a trail behind it that looks like kind of fire or some kind of a light, that has a trail. So there's some people that think that that's what that could be. It says, then a third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch. And it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of the water. Also, again, could be a comet, could be a meteor, all these different things that are described. But it also could be, other people think like nuclear bomb, that sort of thing falling from the sky, because, when you see that. And if it has a trail of fire, something that's being sent out on a rocket with a nuclear. Sure. So it could be that nuclear type of thing, a Holocaust that would cause real destruction and things to die and things to all of that. Those two verses, 8 and 9, we're going to cross-reference with Revelation
16:3.
Maybe 16. Let's see what 16:3 says. Then the second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it became blood as of a dead man, and every living creature in the sea died. Right, that's probably what I meant to put, because the next reference I have is also in 16:12 through 21, and that is the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up so that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Then the third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs of water, and they became blood. All right, let's go back to 8. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on a third of the springs. That's kind of like just what we read there. 8:12. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked and heard an angel flying through the midst of the heavens, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. Let's go to Joel, actually, in this one. 2. What I love about cross-referencing in the Old Testament is all the prophets talked about it. They did. And Daniel gets cited the most because of all his visions, but I mean, all of the prophets talk about it. And it's pretty incredible when you combine everything they all had to say. And so we're going to go to chapter 2. Blow the trumpet in Zion. Here's a trumpet. Blow the trumpet in Zion and sound the alarm on my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming, for it is at hand. A day of darkness. Okay, remember I said a third of the sun, a third of the moon, a third of the stars. A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, like the morning clouds spread over the mountains. A people come, great and strong, the like of whom has never been, nor will there ever be any such after them, even for many successive generations. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. And so in front of them as they're marching, it's like the Garden of Eden, Israel. But behind them, desolation is following behind them. Surely nothing shall escape them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and like swift steeds, so they run. With a noise like chariots, over mountains they leap, like the noise of a flaming fire that devours stubble, like a strong people set in battle array. So we're talking about an army and, what it looks like. So before them, the people writhe in pain. All faces are drained of color, showing fear. They run like mighty men. They climb the wall like men of war. Everyone marches in formation. You think about communists marching in formation. And they do not break ranks. They do not push one another. Everyone marches in his own column. Though they lunge between the weapons, they are not cut down. They run to and fro in the city. They run on the wall. They climb into the houses. They enter at the windows like a thief. The earth quakes before them. The heavens tremble. The sun and moon grow dark, and the stars diminish their brightness. That's just what we read in Revelation 8. The Lord gives voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For strong is the one who executes his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can endure it? Now, therefore, thus says the Lord, turn to me with all your heart. Again, God is pleading with people. Turn to me with all your heart. Now, therefore, thus says the Lord, turn to me with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping and mourning. In other words, repenting. So rend your heart and not your garments. Let your heart be sorry for your sins. Your garments is just a garment, but he's looking at the heart. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful. It's like this last cry out before he destroys everybody. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness. And he relents from doing harm. Who knows if he will turn and relent and leave a blessing behind him? A grain offering and a drink offering for the Lord your God. Blow the trumpet in Zion. Consecrate a fast. Call a sacred assembly. Gather the people. Sanctify the congregation. Assemble the elders. Gather the children and the nursing babes. Let the bridegroom go out from his chamber, and the bride from her dressing room. Interesting, here is the timing of that verse. It's when all this stuff's happening. At the end, when the Battle of Armageddon is gathered and all these things are happening. Let the bridegroom go out from his chamber, and the bride from her dressing room. Let the priest who minister to the Lord weep between the porch and the altar. Let them say, spare your people, O Lord, and do not give your heritage to reproach, that the nations should rule over them. Why should they say among the peoples, where is their God? Then the Lord will be zealous for his land and pity his people. The Lord will answer and say to his people, behold, I will send you grain and new wine and oil, and you will be satisfied by them. I will no longer make you a reproach among the nations, but I will remove far from you the northern army, and will drive him away into a barren and desolate land, with his face toward the eastern sea, and his back toward the western sea. His stench will come up, and his foul odor will rise, because he has done monstrous things. Fear not, O land, and be glad and rejoice, for the Lord has done marvelous things. Do not be afraid, you beasts of the fields, for the open pastures are springing up, and the tree bears its fruit. The fig tree and the vine yield their strength. Be glad then, you children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you the former rain faithfully, and he will cause the rain to come down for you, the former rain and the latter rain in the first month. The threshing floors shall be full of wheat, and the vats overflow with new wine and oil. So I will restore to you the years that the swarming locusts have eaten, the crawling locust, the consuming locust, and the chewing locust, my great army which I sent among you. You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dealt wondrously with you. So the locust, in that, there's a possibility that could be referring to demons. And I'll get into that at another time, but just keep that in mind. Okay. It says, and my people will never be put to shame. Then you will know that I am in the midst of Israel. I am the Lord your God, and there is no other. My people shall never be put to shame, and it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, and all money on my servants and on my maidservants I will pour out my spirit in those days. I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire, pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. And it shall come to pass that whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, among the remnant whom the Lord calls. For behold, in those days and at that time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there. And I'm going to stop there. At that time, at the same time, God is redeeming and saving his people and delivering them out. Behold, in those days at that time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather the nations. So he's saying it's almost like this simultaneous thing is happening, or within a relative short period of time, these things are all occurring. Mm-hmm. And so it continues on, but we can read forever. And, the book of Joel is small. You should just read the whole thing.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So I would encourage that. Then Isaiah 13, we got to go there. I'm trying to get through this today, so we're kind of pushing to finish this. And again, we're coming from reading Revelation 8, and the trumpets are beginning to be blown and unfold. Isaiah 13. The burden against Babylon, which Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw. Lift up a banner on the high mountain. Raise your voice to them. Wave your hand, that they may enter the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones for my anger, those who rejoice in my exaltation. So I have called, maybe he's, this is referring to his type of rapture or whatever. I'm not sure at this point. It says the noise of the multitude in the mountains, like that of many people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. Here we go again, battle of Armageddon. The Lord of hosts musters the army for battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, the Lord and his weapons of indignation. So I think it's like he's calling his army from heaven. At the same time, he's gathering the people from many nations to destroy the whole land. Wail, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It will come as a destruction from the Almighty. So it's not going to just be wonderful and, it's coming as destruction from the Almighty. Therefore, all hands will be limp. Every man's heart will melt. Remember, it talked about fear in the last one we read. And they will be afraid. Pangs and sorrows will take hold of them. They will be in pain as a woman in childbirth. They will be amazed at one another. Their faces will be like flames. Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel, with both wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he will destroy its sinners from it. The stars of the heavens and their coastlands will not give their light. Here it is again. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. It will punish the world for its evil. I will punish the world for its evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. I will halt the arrogance of the proud, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. I will make a mortal more rare than fine gold, a man more than the golden wedge of Ophir. Therefore, I will shake the heavens, and the earth will move out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. It shall be as the hunted gazelle, and as the sheep that no man takes up. Every man will turn to his own people, and everyone will flee to his own land. Everyone who is found will be thrust through, and everyone who is captured will fall by the sword. Their children also will be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses will be plundered, and their wives ravished. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, who will not regard silver, and as for gold, they will not delight in it. Also, their bows will dash the young men to pieces, and they will have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eye will not spare children. And Babylon, the glory of the kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' pride, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It will never be inhabited, nor will it be settled from generation to generation. Nor will the Arabian pitch tents there, nor will the shepherds make their sheepfolds there. But the wild beast of the desert will lie there, and their houses will be full of owls. Ostriches will dwell there, and wild goats will caper there, and hyenas will howl in their citadels, and jackals in their pleasant palaces. Her time is near to come, and her days will not be prolonged. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and I will still choose Israel and settle them in their own land. The strangers will be joined with them, and they will cling to the house of Jacob. Then people will take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel will possess them for servants and maids in the land of the Lord, and they will take them captive, whose captives they were, and rule over their oppressors. It shall come to pass in the day the Lord gives you rest from your sorrow and from your fear and the hard bondage in which you were made to serve, that you will take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased, the golden city ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of the rulers. He who struck the people in wrath with a continual stroke. He who ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and no one hinders. No one's going to hinder it. They ruled the nations in anger, death and cutting off people's heads and torture and terrorism. And the whole earth is at rest and quiet. Oh, can you imagine? They break forth into singing. Indeed, the cypress trees rejoice over you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since you were cut down, no woodsman has come up against us. Hell from beneath is excited about you to meet you at your coming. It stirs up the dead for you, all the chief ones of the earth. It has, okay, now this is going into, I won't continue on here. this is going into talking about Satan. So I'm not going to go there just yet with that. So we'll stop at that there. And then, of course, we read Ezekiel 38. That's also, these all just cross-reference Revelation throughout. We'll be going into Revelation 9 next time. And we're going to talk about a star fallen from heaven. And that is Satan. And we're going to cover some things about Satan and the Antichrist. And we're going to get into all that stuff next. The interesting thing is we are only through the fourth trumpet. We haven't even reached the last three. And we are seeing similarities in what we saw over here in the seals. So let's take a look at that one more time. I'll just read those through and we'll stop.
Where are you?
Okay, let's just go to chapter 6 for a second. The seals Jesus is opening these seals. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of this that is happening in chapter 6 is a time of trouble and tribulation. It's the birth pangs coming as he's opening these seals. Then he gets to the sixth seal and says, and I looked, and right before the six seals is when you see those that are in white robes and they're waiting for their fellow servants, the brethren, as they were killed to be completed and waiting for them to come in. So that was just before that. Now we have the sixth seal. And I looked and opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain island was removed out of its place. The kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave, every free man hid themselves in the caves and the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face. Remember, we read the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand. That is the sixth seal. It's just like what we just read in these trumpets. Remember, we said the long version, the middle version, and the short version. So these are all culminating in the same thing. Then we had the sealing and that silence in heaven. And so we have this kind of simultaneous, and then he's going into the trumpets, which really begin to discuss the wrath being poured out. It's kind of like they overlap each other, but they all end the same with, the same pattern. And we see the same pattern in Ezekiel, in Joel, in all these other, Isaiah, all these other areas that I'm cross-referencing. All of that speaks of the timing of Jesus coming, returning, and it talked about the bride and the bridegroom, and then the armies of heaven, meeting up with the armies of Armageddon. So all this stuff is like this culmination happening, and we're going to continue to look at that. That view does not agree with the pre-trib view in terms of the timing exactly and how they see it all. But that gives a lot to chew on, and maybe next week I'm going to read an excerpt from Chuck Smith's book and give a pre-trib look at the trumpets, and then we'll continue on in that. So we'll see the pre-trib side of it. But I think it's pretty mapped out in God's word itself when we read the chunks out of it that we do, rather than a few little verses here to kind of make it fit into the narrative. All right, we're finished with today and covered a lot of territory today.